I think it's the best in the Jay Gruden era, the best in the Bruce Allen era, and I would make an argument, and I haven't put it all together yet. Maybe that's something I'll do. It's the best to me in the salary cap era, and maybe that's not a stretch for this organization, and maybe I'm not saying anything that's that outlandish here because this organization, quite honestly, has sucked for the last quarter century, but it is. And, yeah, as I point out in it, that doesn't mean they're going to win 11 or 12 games. That doesn't mean they're going to light the world on fire. It just means that they're finally serious about building a football roster, one that is not meant to sell tickets necessarily, fellas. It's meant to win football games. And what does that mean? It means probably win 9 games. Maybe if they're lucky, win 10 games. If they're really unlucky and suffer a ton of injuries, they're going to be better than they were last year where they suffered a ton of injuries and they were only able to win 7 with a lot of things going wrong around them and a big-time contract situation looming overhead. Well, they don't have that this year, so I think that equals at least 8 wins on a bad season in my eyes, probably 9 wins this year.
The problem with that that way of thinking, Chris, and I hope you're right, is you're taking out the X factor, a massive factor, which is brutal.
I agree with you, EB. Look,
so I don't know how you get to 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can.
Well, look, maybe I'm trying to be a little bit more optimistic than I probably should be, right? But here's the way I kind of look at it. Maybe this is bad of me to look at it this way. So I'll take my lumps here. This team has been terrible under Gruden in week 1, opening up seasons. They're 0-4 under him, 0-3 at home, so they open up at Arizona. Nothing is assured. Of course it's not, because they have veteran quarterback Sam Bradford, or they'll start the rookie, what have you. But they should start 2-0, even with Andrew Luck back for the Indianapolis Colts in the home opener the next week. Then you get Green Bay, right, for the second week of the second home game of the season. Mm-hmm. Again, great. Aaron Rodgers is great, but that's a team you should beat at home. That's not a great roster. I know Aaron Rodgers is great. That's not a great roster. You're right, the schedule gets really tough after that. But you know what? At some point, this team, with the balance that I believe, I could be wrong, the balance that they now have on both sides of the football, and I think the depth that they have elsewhere on the roster that will allow them to be better on special teams. And that's an area that I think we're never going to pay enough attention to. That was badly exposed last year, that contributed to a bunch of these losses that made them a 7-9 team. We always concentrate on the defense and not stopping the run and Kirk Cousins and not being able to, well, how bad their special teams were last year were partly because of the injury, partly because they didn't have enough depth, and all of that has been improved this year, and it made their special teams awful last year, which exposed them as the meat grinder of the schedule kicked in. I think that's all better this year. I hope it's all better this year. I believe it's all better this year, which will allow them to be better against these tougher teams.
Joined by Chris Russell. All right, let's go through this. And, Cakes, maybe you can keep track with a ding or a buzz on whether the Junkies agree with Chris Russell, who posits that the Redskins finally have the depth to compete. All right, we'll start with quarterback. Are they deeper this year? Talk about that position.
Yeah, so I think Alex Smith is, to me, a slight upgrade over Kirk Cousins. The different things he can do, the extend the play, the athleticism, the veteran leadership. I think his team will like him more than they liked ultimately Kirk Cousins. I know his will like then ultimately they like Kirk Cousins. And I think the bigger thing is, again, the extension of the play. I kind of mentioned that. The other thing, as you look deeper into the position, I know this is not that important, but if you suffer, for whatever reason, injuries, they have a third quarterback this year. They have a third quarterback in the fold, which they didn't have last year. Okay, not a big deal, Kevin Hogan, but they didn't have one last year. That's big for roster building down the line. Okay, so I think
let's go around the room real quick.
Yeah.
Would you say better?
Yes.
Worse? Or
better.
Push? No, I know you say it's better. That's your article. I'm going to go into Junkies. I'm going to say push. Jason, a quarterback. Redskins. Better, worse, push.
But hold on.
You're tortured here.
Are we just basing it on talent or numbers?
It's your opinion.
What are you yelling at me for? I'm trying to decipher what you're asking.
Are they
I'm
better
say,
at quarterback this year than last year? Worse?
I think Cousins. I think Cousins was more of a selfish player. I think Smith is more of a team player. I'll say slightly better with Smith, but I don't think. Hold on, but I don't think the numbers will be as good.
I think they're slightly worse.
EB?
Better.
Is that the Kevin Hogan factor?
Please.
Pushes him over the top. All right, let's go to running back.
By the way, I'm not factoring in Kevin Hogan. I'm just talking about Smith.
Nor should you.
The starter.
I'm not talking about the depth of the position.
But Chris is writing about the depth. All right, running back, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with
we're
you.
going 3-13.
Correct.
Right. Hogan is just there for the
Yeah.
future, and just because they screwed up with the Nate Sudfeld
He's
situation.
a developmental guy.
I don't even think we need to talk about running back with you. We all agree that it's better because they draft guys. All right, wide receiver. Talk about the wide receiver depth.
Wide receiver is not better than when Deshaun and Pierre were here. It is clearly 1,000% better than it was last year. No argument from me.